I've spent most of my adult life around people in their final chapters. Some as a hospice care worker, others simply as a daughter, a neighbor, a quiet observer sitting beside someone older and wiser, listening more than speaking. And if there's one thing I've come to understand about aging, especially after 60, it's this: mornings carry weight. Not just emotionally, biologically. The human body, as it gets older, becomes more sensitive to the transitions, especially that first hour after waking. And yet, that's the time most of us rush through, ignore, or fill with habits we've long outgrown but never questioned. I remember one man I used to visit weekly, Mr. Alden, 73, tall, slow-moving, thoughtful. Every time I arrived, he was already dressed, coffee in hand, TV murmuring in the background. On the surface, he seemed fine, but one morning, I found him sitting in silence, holding his chest. "I got up too fast," he whispered, almost embarrassed. "Felt the room spin, like my body wasn't ready for me." That's the kind of moment we rarely talk about. The subtle signals before something serious happens. Not the heart attack itself, not the stroke, but the small decisions that quietly tip the scale. So today, I want to walk with you gently through 5 morning habits that might be increasing stroke risk in seniors over 60. Not to scare you, not to lecture, but to share what I've seen, what I've learned, and what people have wished they'd known just a little earlier. Let's begin with the first one: getting out of bed too quickly. Now, this might sound harmless, even admirable. I'm still active. Some say, I like to move, but here's the truth. For older adults, that sudden shift from lying down to standing upright creates a cascade inside the body. During sleep, your heart rate slows, your blood vessels relax, and your blood pressure drops. When you wake, your body needs a few minutes to readjust, to gently bring blood back up to the brain. But when someone jumps out of bed without pause, it can lead to orthostatic hypotension, a drop in blood pressure that may cause dizziness, disorientation, or even fainting. One woman I worked with, Nora, was only 68 when she experienced what her doctor called a mini-stroke, a TIA. It happened in the kitchen, 20 minutes after she got up. But when they traced it back, her doctor gently asked, "Do you jump out of bed in the morning?" She laughed at first, then paused. "I always have," she said. "I thought slowing down meant I was getting old." But that's just it. Slowing down is not weakness. It's wisdom. We often forget that aging isn't about stopping. It's about adapting, making room for the body's new rhythms. The gentle recommendation we gave Nora, and many others like her, is simple. Before rising, pause. Open your eyes. Breathe. Sit up slowly. Let your legs hang off the bed for a moment. Then, when your body feels ready, stand with intention. This tiny ritual, just 30 to 60 seconds long, can make all the difference. It's not just about preventing dizziness. It's about honoring the body, giving it space to move from stillness to activity without panic. Another trigger I've quietly seen over the years is holding in urine after waking. Yes, it sounds mundane, even silly, but it's surprisingly common, especially in seniors who want to wait a little longer, perhaps to rest or avoid a cold floor. The problem is this: a full bladder puts pressure on the cardiovascular system. For someone with already fragile blood vessels or blood pressure issues, that extra internal strain in the early morning can tip the scale toward a spike, sometimes dangerously so. Dr. Patel, a geriatrician I deeply respect, once told me during a joint care visit, the first signal of the morning isn't light, it's bladder tension. Ignoring that signal isn't just uncomfortable, it's risky. He explained that when we resist the urge, the body releases stress hormones, especially cortisol, which raises blood pressure. Combine that with the body's natural morning surge, and it becomes a hidden stroke risk. I once supported a woman named Beatrice who had limited mobility. Her son had installed rails for her, but still, she often delayed getting out of bed. One morning, she collapsed while trying to stand. The doctors later confirmed her blood pressure had spiked, likely due to that sustained internal tension. Bladder full, body stressed, too fast to rise. We later arranged a bedside commode. Not elegant, but she smiled and said, "I feel less afraid in the mornings now." And that's really the heart of it. So many of these changes aren't about fear. They're about ease. About creating a softer start to the day so the rest can follow with more grace. In the next part, we'll talk about 2 habits that seem harmless but quietly disrupt hydration and blood flow, and how something as simple as the order you drink your liquids can matter more than we think. The second most overlooked stroke trigger I've seen, especially in those over 60, is drinking coffee or tea before water. Now, before you worry, this isn't about giving up your morning coffee ritual. I wouldn't ask that. I've shared enough gentle mornings with older adults to know how sacred that first sip can be. The warmth, the smell, the familiar comfort of routine. But the sequence matters more than most people realize. Caffeine, whether from coffee or tea, acts as a diuretic, pulls water out of the body. And after a night of sleep, when the body is already slightly dehydrated, this can quietly thicken the blood. For seniors with already narrowed arteries or mild hypertension, that thickness, that lack of morning hydration creates a perfect storm. Dr. Nguyen, a neurologist I once collaborated with during a hospital transfer, said it simply, "The brain needs fluidity in the morning, not stimulation. A dehydrated vessel is more vulnerable." I remember one man, Edgar, who always joked that water was for plants. At 71, he had never liked the taste. His day began, without fail, with 2 mugs of strong black coffee. But after a minor stroke landed him in rehabilitation, a nurse gently asked, "What's the first thing you drink when you wake up?" He answered with pride. She responded with kindness, "Let's try giving your brain water before we give it caffeine." It wasn't about blaming Edgar. It was about inviting change gently. Together, we created a small morning ritual. A glass of warm water with a slice of lemon. Something his body could absorb easily. Something that didn't feel foreign. And the difference? He said he began to feel less foggy. That his hands didn't tingle as much. That the world felt softer. There's no magic cure in a single glass of water, of course. But there's something profound in giving the body what it truly needs first: hydration, stability, circulation, before layering on stimulation. If you or someone you love is over 60, consider this gentle sequence. Step 1. A full glass of room temperature water upon waking. Step 2. Wait 15 to 20 minutes before drinking coffee or tea. Step 3. Notice how you feel and trust the small shifts, because that's often how change comes, in quiet ways. Another habit I've seen repeatedly, one that's deeply ingrained in modern life, is checking a phone, TV, or screen immediately after waking. This one's more emotional than physical, but it still carries weight. We wake up. We reach news, messages, notifications, sometimes within seconds of opening our eyes. The issue here isn't information, it's timing. In the first 30 minutes after waking, your brain is transitioning out of rest. Cortisol is naturally elevated. Blood pressure is rising. The heart is reestablishing its rhythm. It's a delicate phase, like stretching a tight muscle that hasn't moved all night. When we add screen time too quickly, especially with content that's alarming, fast-paced, or emotionally jarring, we amplify that pressure. A hospice nurse I deeply admire, Melina, once told me, "It's not the big shocks that hurt us most in old age. It's the constant, small ones we ignore. And screens? They deliver those small shocks on schedule." I once cared for a widow, Marjorie, who had developed a routine of watching the morning news in bed. She said it helped her feel connected. But over time, her anxiety grew. She began experiencing morning chest tightness. Not quite pain, but not peace either. One day, her granddaughter visited and suggested they start the morning with music instead. Soft piano, gentle instrumental tracks. After a week, Marjorie quietly said, "I forgot how quiet used to feel." The shift wasn't dramatic, but it was healing. So here's a suggestion, not a rule. When you wake, let your body lead before your phone does. Open a curtain, stretch, sit with your breath, drink water, and if you can, resist the urge to check the outside world until you've greeted your inner one first. Screens will always be there, but you, your peace, your pressure, your heart, deserve a head start. If you're still here, feel free to leave your thoughts below. I read each one with care. In the next part, we'll look at something most people shrug off as minor, skipping breakfast, and how this quiet habit might affect brain circulation more than we realize. There's something deeply personal about food, especially in the morning. For many of the seniors I've cared for or simply sat with, breakfast isn't just a meal. It's a memory, a ritual, or in some cases, a skipped moment that quietly disappears without being questioned. The third trigger I want to speak about today is exactly that: skipping breakfast or delaying it too long. Now, I know not everyone wakes up hungry. Some say they feel nauseous in the morning. Others believe skipping breakfast helps them cut back or control weight. These feelings are valid. But in those over 60, skipping that first meal can have subtle and dangerous consequences for the brain, heart, and blood vessels. You see, during sleep, your body fasts for about 8 to 10 hours. When you wake, blood sugar is low, and your systems are preparing to re-enter the day. For younger people, the body compensates quickly. But for older adults, whose arteries may be stiffer, or whose blood pressure is harder to regulate, this prolonged fasting can backfire. Your body interprets the lack of food as a stressor. And when that happens, it releases cortisol and adrenaline, hormones that elevate blood pressure and can constrict blood vessels. Dr. Simons, a quiet-spoken endocrinologist I once shadowed in a clinic for seniors, explained it like this: in the morning, food isn't just about calories. It's about signaling to the body, you're safe, you're fueled, you can stabilize now. Without that signal, the body stays in a low-grade stress state. And over time, this increases the risk of vascular events, including stroke. I think of Harold, one of my favorite clients. He was 76, witty, and always insisted he'd never needed breakfast. Said it slowed him down. He'd drink coffee, skip food, and eat his first meal around noon. But during a mild TIA, a transient ischemic attack, one of the first things his geriatric care team looked at wasn't medication. It was his morning routine. He was asked to log how he started each day. And what emerged wasn't surprising to them, but it shocked him. On days he skipped breakfast, he felt more irritable, more tired, and more prone to blood pressure spikes. So we tried an experiment. Not a full meal. Not cereal and eggs and toast. Just a banana or a small bowl of oatmeal. Something warm. Something his body could receive without stress. And after a month, he smiled one morning and said, "It's strange. I feel steadier. Like my brain starts softer now." The beauty of this is that breakfast doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be traditional. It just has to be present. Because what your body is really asking for is reassurance. A cue that energy is coming, and your systems can ease into the day. If you or someone you care for is over 60 and finds eating early difficult, try these gentle shifts. A slice of toast with almond butter. A few soaked walnuts and warm tea. A small smoothie with banana and yogurt. Or even something as simple as half an avocado with salt and olive oil. It's not about discipline. It's about tending to the body with softness. And here's something else. I've noticed that those who eat early also tend to breathe more slowly, move with more intention, and, perhaps most importantly, feel more grounded. Because stroke risk isn't just biological. It's behavioral. It builds in the small moments, the ones we rush through or dismiss. And that's why this habit matters. Later in life, it's not the big changes that save us. It's the small rituals that restore us. In the next part, we'll explore a habit that many people view as modern or harmless, but which activates the stress response almost instantly. Reaching for devices right after waking. A moment that may seem minor, but isn't. It starts with a simple reach. The phone, just an arm's length away. The familiar tap. A screen lights up. News headlines, missed messages, weather alerts, maybe even a reminder to refill a prescription. It seems harmless, almost routine. But for seniors, especially those over 60, this seemingly small habit of checking devices immediately after waking is the fourth stroke-related trigger I've seen most often overlooked. Let me explain why. When we first wake, our bodies are in transition. The heart is slowly adjusting, blood pressure is naturally rising, and our nervous system is shifting from rest to alertness. It's a vulnerable time, physiologically and emotionally. When we flood our minds with stimulating, often negative information first thing, we accelerate this process unnaturally. And for older adults, that sudden shift can increase vascular pressure, elevate stress hormones like cortisol, and even thicken the blood slightly due to stress responses. Dr. Elaine Marcus, a geriatric psychologist I once worked alongside in a senior care program, told me, "The brain needs to enter the day with light and breath, not headlines and fear." She wasn't being poetic. She was being precise. A 72-year-old woman I supported, named Clara, had developed a quiet morning ritual over years. Wake up, turn on the news, check her phone, scroll through headlines while still in bed. When her anxiety worsened and her heart palpitations became more frequent in the mornings, her physician suggested something unexpected: a technology pause. Clara resisted at first. "I like knowing what's going on in the world," she said, but we proposed a compromise. For the first 30 minutes after waking, no screens. Instead, she was to open the curtains, sip warm water, and sit in a chair with soft instrumental music or silence, her choice. After 2 weeks, she admitted, "I still miss the updates, but I don't miss the panic." What she discovered, and what I've seen over and over, is that the body and brain crave softness at the start of the day, especially after 60, when systems regulate more slowly and adrenaline spikes can be more taxing. It's not just the content on the screen. It's the posture of attention, the sudden brightness, the immediate shift to decision-making, judgment, response. Your heart doesn't need that at 6:45 a.m. What it does need is time to expand gently, a few full breaths before stimulation, maybe even the sound of birds outside your window before you hear voices through a screen. I once sat with a man named Lowell. He had been a professor for years and still read the news every morning. But in his 80s, he began printing the newspaper the night before, reading it after breakfast with his tea, once his body had caught up to his mind. He said it changed how he digested information. "I read the world better when I first read myself," he said. It stayed with me. So if you're someone or you love someone who checks their phone within moments of waking, this is not a command to stop. It's an invitation to delay by just a few minutes, to meet the day with your body first, not your inbox, to listen to your breath before the news. The quiet can feel strange at first, even uncomfortable, but then it begins to feel like a kindness. And kindness, especially to yourself, is a form of prevention. In the final part of this video, we'll come to the fifth and last stroke trigger, one that hides behind habit and comfort, missing or delaying that first trip to the bathroom. A trigger many people laugh off until they understand what it does to the heart. This last one is a bit more private, but I've learned over the years it's often the quietest habits that hold the most weight. The fifth morning stroke trigger in seniors over 60 is this: delaying your first trip to the bathroom after waking. It's something I've seen again and again, older adults choosing to stay in bed just a bit longer, even when they feel the urge. Sometimes it's because of cold floors or stiff joints, or simply the desire to avoid the discomfort of moving too early. And often, there's a sense of, what harm could 5 more minutes do? But here's what happens inside the body. When your bladder is full, it stretches. This sends signals through the nervous system that increase blood pressure and heart rate, a natural response to encourage elimination. However, in seniors, especially those already managing hypertension, heart conditions, or vascular fragility, that spike can become a dangerous strain on the system. I once spoke with a cardiovascular nurse named Julia, who worked on the post-stroke recovery floor at a local hospital. She told me, "We've seen patients come in after a morning collapse, and sometimes the most overlooked detail is they ignored the urge to urinate right after waking. It seems trivial, but the body remembers everything." That line stuck with me. The body remembers everything. It remembers tension. It remembers compression. And it reacts often before we realize it. Walter, a man I visited weekly in his assisted living apartment, once confided that he often held in his bladder because it took time to move with his walker. "By the time I get to the bathroom," he said, "I'm already tired. Sometimes I just wait." After a minor stroke led to a brief hospital stay, we had a conversation. Not a warning, just a reframe. "What if going to the bathroom wasn't something to delay?" I asked. "But a way to care for your heart each morning?" He paused, then smiled. You always find a way to make things sound gentle. We installed motion sensor night lights. We placed a stable chair near the bathroom. And more importantly, he began seeing that first morning movement as an act of kindness to his body, not just a task. For those with mobility concerns, bedside solutions can be dignified and discreet. What matters most is responding to the body's cues without shame or delay. Because stroke risk is rarely about one dramatic moment. It's the buildup, the quiet pressure, the ignored signal, the repeated delay. And that's the thread tying all 5 of these habits together. They're not loud. They don't seem urgent. But in the gentle hour after waking, when your blood is adjusting, your brain is reorienting, and your heart is finding its rhythm again, your choices matter more than you think. So here's a quiet recap, not as a list, but as an invitation. Rise slowly. Use the bathroom without delay. Drink water before caffeine. Eat something, even something small. Let your mind breathe before you look at a screen. These are not rules. They're kindnesses, offered from one life to another. Over the years, I've watched these small choices change lives, not dramatically, but meaningfully. I've seen fear replaced with steadiness, confusion replaced with rhythm, and rushed, stressful mornings transformed into rituals of care. And isn't that what we all want in the end? To care for ourselves the way we've long cared for others. If this kind of quiet reflection feels helpful to you, you're welcome to come back anytime. I'll be here,